Welcome, everybody, to the Jim Acosta Show. And I can't think of a better guest heading into this 4th of July weekend. In between your barbecues and your trips to the beach, please spend some time to read the piece from the man on the right side of your screen. That is former U.S. Courts of Appeals Judge J. Michael Luttig. He has a new Substack out just in time for Independence Day. It's up on the Tellus Substack account run by our friend Ryan Lizza. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Great to see you, Judge. Great to see you, Ryan.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Jim. It's a real honor for me to be on with you today.
No, and it's great to be on with you. And I know we've spoken before, and I think it was before the election, perhaps the last time we spoke, and there was a lot on your mind then. There appears to be a lot on your mind now. And Ryan, you write about Judge Luttig's piece. And again, it's up on Substack. You can find it there on Ryan's account, Tell Us. Ryan writes, this is not a piece that should be skimmed or scanned. Luttig is writing for the ages. I recommend you take some time away from the crush of news, find a quiet place without distractions, and read this piece carefully. That's when the power of what he has written will hit you. And then, Judge, you write, just everybody can indulge me for just a moment because I want this to sink in. This is what the judge writes. When the tyrannical reign of King George III became destructive of the ends of government by law, under which all persons are equal and endowed with certain inalienable rights, the American colonists declared their independence from the British king, chronicling 27 grievances of self-evident truths about tyranny as reasons for their Declaration of Independence. On this July 4th, 2025, the eve of the 250th anniversary of America's Declaration of Independence and the founding of this nation, we, the people, hold to be self-evident these 27 truths about freedom and about tyranny. Judge, you then go through the grievances that were laid out in the original declaration, some of which sound awfully familiar on this 4th of July. Let's discuss your thoughts.
Thank you so much, Jim. It is a pleasure to be on. Um, I have long wanted to write an Independence Day document of one kind or another, but I didn't really ever feel that I had something to say, much less something different than what's been said for almost 250 years. Fast forward to today, there's everything in the world that needs to be said on this July 4th, 2025. And this document wrote itself for me. It is, to borrow the phrase, self-evident. Not only self-evident truths about freedom, but self-evident truths about tyranny. And thus the title of this piece. As your audience knows, in the original Declaration of Independence, the American colonists outlined 27 grievances, and those were grievances against tyranny. Then, in the Declaration of Independence, the truths that, quote, we the people hold to be self-evident are relatively few in number. Just obviously, primarily that we're equally endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So there's a twist in the piece that I wrote, and I don't intend to get into the weeds, but indulge me just one more sentence.
No, take your time.
The the self-evident truths in the Declaration of Independence are relatively few in number, but the grievances were 27 in number. And when I juxtapose the two for purposes of this document, that's where you end up with the self-evident truths about freedom first, dash, and also about tyranny. But Jim, I see myself as uh, little more than a scrivener here. Uh, I, I hope a scrivener of history. That would be the highest honor I could achieve in my lifetime. But a scrivener of nothing more than what uh, the founders of our nation uh, themselves wrote in the Declaration of Independence and in the Constitution of the United States. The only addition that I have made to their words and their thoughts is to carry forward now, after almost 250 years, the self evident truths about the government that they established for the United States of America and the rights, liberties, and freedoms that they, not us, put into the Constitution of the United States.
Yeah. Yeah. And and it's so important to read it and to go through those 27 grievances. And as I was saying at the top of all of this, you see I mean, the parallels just jump off the page. And Ryan, I mean, if you can sort of
Yeah.
help us appreciate that and why you
Yeah.
decided to do this project, why you and the judge
Oh,
wanted to do this. Yeah. I mean, I guess
well, it was
it's pretty
pretty
darn
much a
clear.
no-brainer when when
Yeah.
when when Judge Luttig calls you and tells you about a piece and asks you, what he thinks, he should do with it. You do everything you can to make sure that piece gets published. And I, he told me the project he was working on, and I asked him to consider publishing it with Telus News, and to sort of help launch him on Substack, and
Yeah.
with the idea being that going forward, maybe he'll uh, make it a destination. So Jim, we got to encourage him to be a regular Substack writer.
Absolutely.
Uh, and I read, I obviously told him I would publish it without even reading it. I never even read it before I committed to it. But the piece, like I said at the beginning, it's the 27 self-evident truths are. It's like poetry. It requires some careful, concentrated reading for the power of this piece to hit you. And it was only when I actually sat down a couple of days ago and finally read it start to finish without any distractions, that you realize that the times we are living in now, as distant as the revolution and as distant as the time of the Declaration of Independence might seem to us, it's shockingly the similarities between the 1770s and the 2020s are much, much more apparent than I ever would have imagined. And that really, really hit home after I read this piece carefully. And if you'll indulge me, Jim, I just want to
Yeah.
read, of the 27, one of my favorite pairings. Like I said, it is like poetry, and there's a sort of statement of a self-evident truth that Judge Luttig has written, and then I a quote almost always from the Declaration of Independence itself that is a comment on that self-evident truth. And this one I really love, Judge. And this is the judge's writing in this first one. Government should only wage war against foreign enemies, not misperceived domestic enemies. The people are not the enemy of the government. Rather, the government that regards the people as its enemy is itself the enemy of the people.
Hmm.
And this is from the Declaration. The judge adds, for the king has excited domestic insurrections amongst us and has abdicated government here by waging war against us. The king is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny already begun, with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. So that's just one example of 27 couplets like that that are in this piece. Like I said, it's poetry.
Yeah, and Judge, that part jumped out at me too. because of the reference of the enemy of the people. The press has been referred to as such. And I guess, why did you want to talk about that? Why did you want to write about that specific part of this?
Uh, well, Jim, first let me say that um, to all of your audience and to all of America, in my view, there's no reason in this world for the citizens of this country to know the words from the Declaration of Independence, let alone the Constitution of the United States. That's not their job. All to say that there is no reason, in my view, uh, for the past almost 250 years, for the American people to think about these issues until this moment in American history, for reasons that I'm confident are apparent to every citizen of the United States of America. Now, the I the only the I'm very proud of the original thinking that I did in order to cast these self-evident truths in the contemporary day and moment. And without going through them all, it's self-evident to anyone who reads this that the parallels, if not the identity, of most of these self-evident truths about both freedom and tyranny have been drawn into question today by the incumbent president of the United States. That's to say nothing. This is common knowledge. It's only to say that for the first time in almost 250 years, these fundamental, foundational principles and values of the United States of America, the Declaration of Independence, and the Constitution of the United States have been drawn into question by the President of the United States of America. Again, for that reason, I regard myself as merely a scrivener of that which every American citizen today knows a great deal.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and the part that jumps out to me, and, I think this could be worthy of discussion, where you talk about every person's rights, liberties, and freedoms, as well as the rights of the majority and minority, are best secured and safeguarded by separation of the respective powers of the legislative, executive, and judiciary. And by separation of the powers of each of the branches of government from the powers of the others, the powers of each of the three co-equal branches of government are limited and checked and balanced by the powers of the others. And Judge, you know this all too well. This has been a subject of conversation going back to the Watergate era, that the executive branch has expanded to the powers of the executive branch have been expanded to the point where it does cause concern that things are out of balance, that things are not in check. And what we've seen, and I know we don't want to drift too much into current events, but what we've seen in recent years is the Trump presidency and many folks feel as though this has been done by the Supreme Court, has just been given almost a blank check, carte blanche, to keep expanding its powers. The immunity decision by the Supreme Court, perhaps being the Exhibit A in all of this. Your thoughts? Did any of that come into mind when you were talking about this particular section, when you're writing this particular section?
Of course, Jim.
Yeah.
And today, and what America has experienced over the past 6 to 8 years, that was in the forefront of my mind in every single word of this document. But to answer the implicit question for your audience, um, the parallels between the Declaration of Independence and the American colonist uh, articulation of the grievances against the British Crown and King George III. The parallels, Jim, the parallels, if not identity, of those issues exist today for the first time in American history.
Yeah. And Ryan, I mean, to hear, a federal judge say that, uh, that sets off alarm bells for me. I don't know about you, Ryan, but it sets off alarm bells for me.
Yeah, I think that's what I was trying to get at before when I said that this was the first time in my life reading this piece and reading it carefully where I had any sense that the ideals that this country was founded on and went to war over and overthrew a monarchy, that those events that seem, when you learn about them in grade school, seem not that dissimilar than a fantasy movie that you might watch. When I was growing up in the '80s, Star Wars and learning about the Revolutionary War might have been, they're just from totally other realms. And reading this piece was the first time where I felt um, a weird connection to the origins of this country, because the way that the judge has spelled out the things that were the colonists were fighting for. The capitalization's a little funky.
Yeah.
The clothes are different. All the elements of modernity are absent, but in so many other ways, it is um, very, very, very similar to the discussions we are having right now in the United States about an executive that is hell bent on expanding its authority beyond what is normal in this country. The checks and balances that are built into our system are eroding. Um, and I encourage people to spend some time this July 4th reading the Declaration and then reading the judge's piece. And I think it will be a wake up call to a lot of people who still have this idea that we are, as modern Americans, isolate or insulated from history.
Yeah. Well,
Ryan, if I
go ahead.
may, so that's just the highest compliment that you could ever pay to me, and thank you for that. My primary goal in writing this piece was to make accessible to the American people today all that was self-evident in 1776, almost 250 years ago next year. And that's my veiled reference to being a mere scrivener. That's by which I mean that all I did, and I take no credit whatsoever, is just making all of these principles and values that underlie the Declaration of the Independence and the Constitution of the United States accessible to all Americans today.
Yeah,
You,
and that is
you,
such an important point. Yeah,
and he
I
did
was going
it.
to, and you absolutely nailed it, Judge. I mean, the thing that pops into my head listening to all of this is I had this conversation with this young influencer the other day, Aaron Parnas, and he was, saying something to me that just blew my mind, which is his first real recollection of the presidency was that of Donald Trump. because he's in his mid-20s. And so he has
Yeah.
no basis of knowledge going back beyond that, but besides looking at archival footage or watching the occasional PBS special on the Clinton presidency or Bush presidency or whatever. And that is why I think this project is so very important. What you've done is so very important because people need to understand that it's in our DNA. It's who we are. It's, rebelling against an undemocratic king who's out of control and maybe out of his mind is very much a part of the fabric of the founding of this country. It's an exciting story. It's an adventure. It's something that we should all learn about and kind of revel in. So I'm glad you did it, Judge. It's just remarkable.
Well, thank you, Jim. If I have achieved that accessibility to all that has gone before us, then I will have achieved my ultimate objective in writing this piece. Just bringing forward 2.5 centuries, all that was self-evident at the founding of the United States of America.
Yeah. Yeah. And Ryan, I mean, and Judge, feel free to weigh in on this, although I don't want to pull you into too many current events, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't bring up the fact that, I mean, just in the last week or so, we've had discussions about the 14th Amendment, about birthright citizenship, about, the limiting of nationwide injunctions. And there's been a discussion as to, well, that hasn't always been around since the founding of the Republic and so on. But and Judge, feel free to weigh in on this. But I mean, some of this stuff I just always thought was sort of, these would be things and matters that previous compositions of the Supreme Court would probably dispatch fairly quickly and say, why are we even dealing with this stuff? And yet the country is now smack dab in the middle of this. It just feels like a daily constitutional crisis that evolves in various different directions depending on the day of the week.
Yeah.
No, and
Go ahead,
I
Judge.
will feel that first, Jim, um, because all of this is known by every American citizen. So, to take your question in its most specific form, the President of the United States has challenged, uh, openly challenged, almost, if not every one of these foundational principles uh, of the United States of America. Then speaking again, because it's public knowledge, you know, what the bullet where I talk about, no person is above the law. That's of course the today's equivalent of no man is above the law, and it's a matter of public record that when the Supreme Court decided Trump against the United States, um, I said that decision cut the heart out of the United States of America and the Constitution of the United States. Again, which now at this moment is just to state the obvious that notwithstanding the Supreme Court's abhorrent decision in Trump against the United States, it is still, and it will forever be the case, that in the United States of America, no man is above the law, least of all the President of the United States of America.
Yeah, your thoughts, Ryan.
Well, just to add what you said, and to be a little bit more, uh, uh, political and sort of talking down in the weeds of current events. And I haven't talked to
Yeah.
you about this, Judge Luttig, but when I look at the last month, just take a step back and see the federalization of the National Guard in California, sending troops to LA, sending the Marines to LA, bombing Iran without any congressional authorization, and obviously without any UN authorization. That wouldn't ever cross Donald Trump's mind. And the bill that's going through Congress right now, which will massively expand ICE, which has not proven itself this year worthy of that kind of expansion without some serious checks from Congress. And then finally, the Supreme Court's decision, which, I know it's a technical decision. I know there's a little bit of debate about it, but the way I read it is to neuter at least any lower court's ability to rein in Trump. I guess there's a bit of a question mark and debate about whether the Supreme Court still has that ability. I suppose it does, but it certainly seems to have neutered the lower courts, and will eventually invalidate a lot of these national injunctions. So you have Congress, the Supreme Court, um, ceding power to Donald Trump, and you have Donald Trump in the meantime amassing more executive authority in ways that are unchecked. And that's just in the last month, those events. We're only in June, excuse me, we're now in July. We're only in July of the first year. So that's why I say this piece could not be more timely. The things that
Yeah.
I just discussed are not even mentioned in this piece, but this piece underlies the principles that this piece discusses, underlies everything that I just talked about.
Ryan and Jim, all I will say as to that profound observation is this, which is all that need be said. The founding fathers of this nation, the authors of the Declaration of Independence, and the framers of the Constitution of the United States foresaw this day, this day, and this president, and feared this day and this president literally as a matter of historical fact more than anything else that they could imagine 250 years ago. That's why, that's why that these self-evident truths of both freedom but also tyranny are so manifestly applicable today for the first time in American history.
And I know we don't want to get into the current occupant too much, but do we think, based on what you just said, that Trump has cracked the code here and how to sort of rip this document apart and create a king-like position for himself in this country, or is on the path to doing that? Um, or is it partly because these institutions have allowed it to happen and contributed to this and made it possible? And that, I
Well,
guess that's the danger.
that's a complex question, and
Yeah.
I'll try to rabble it a piece at a time. Um, I would never use your phraseology,
Yeah.
but yes, Donald Trump has, quote, cracked the code. But in the United States of America, that ought to be to say nothing whatsoever. The goal is not for the President of the United States to crack the code. The goal, objective, and only duty of the President of the United States is faithfully execute the laws of the United States, including the paramount law in this nation, the Constitution. So the current president, the incumbent, he hasn't cracked anything. He wouldn't say that himself. He says every day of the week that he is confronting America. He is confronting the Declaration of Independence, and he's confronting the Constitution of the United States. And he's proud of that. He's confronting the federal judiciary. He is confronting the Congress of the United States of America. So that's what he would say and has said.
Yeah.
Uh, so again, in the judicial world, we would say we can take judicial notice of all of that. We're not talking behind this president's back. He's talking like this every single day of the week to the American people. So
That's, Judge, that's
I,
when you say judicial notice, you mean that if you're a judge sitting, you shouldn't ignore the extracurricular comments, what he's putting out on social media and all the rest. You don't have to just listen to the words of the lawyers that show up in court. Is that what you mean by that?
no, but that's not your fault. I mean,
What is judicial notice?
judicial notice means that that the court can take notice of what has happened. That there is no
Yeah.
debate as to what has happened. It's not a factual question, or in this instance, a legal question. Take, for example, this president's executive order challenging the 14th Amendment's, birthright citizenship provision. Okay, that's about as open and notorious as could ever happen in the United States of America. That's a president of the United States saying that he fundamentally disagrees with the Constitution of the United States of America, and he's imploring the Supreme Court of the United States to change the Constitution. Okay? That's something that we could take judicial notice of, Ryan.
And yet, and I know Jim's going to jump in with the exact same question, and yet, Judge, the Supreme Court took a case where the basis of it was that executive order and was absolutely silent, the majority at least, on the merits and the substance of the Supreme Order, and instead decided this narrower question over national injunctions. We haven't talked about this offline. What's your view of that?
It's reprehensible. The Supreme Court of the United States abdicated its responsibility to the American people by deciding that case in the way it did, not saying a single word about the executive order itself. I'm not saying that the Supreme Court erred in deciding the injunction case the way it did, though it did, and I would take this opportunity to say to the two of you that in deciding the case the way that it did, it gave its official imprimatur to the suspicion of the American people that the law is what each individual federal judge says it is, and that there is no such thing as the law in America. That's what we've had up to 250 years ago. That's the nefariousness of the Supreme Court's holding last week in the nationwide injunction case. I would never in my life have decided that case without addressing the only issue that really mattered. And the court did a grave disservice to the country by doing so.
And so when you hear people question, whether or not this court, the Roberts-led court, is simply there to do Trump's bidding, or feels that they're there to do Trump's bidding, or they have a specific idea in mind about what the power of the presidency should be or his presidency should be. I know you don't want to cast aspersions here or anything like that, but I mean, I would have to assume that you might think that some of those feelings are okay to have, that people have a right to be a little suspicious of the Supreme Court right now.
I do, but the way I will respond to and answer your question, in the narrowest way that I can think of, um, which is that in this case, but also in every case that the Supreme Court has heard over the past 6 months on a so-called emergency basis at the request of the President of the United States, the court has, I think, in every instance, accommodated the President of the United States in a way that I think is regrettable.
Yeah. Well, and all the more reason for everybody to read your piece, Judge Luttig. To me, if you don't read this weekend, you're not doing your homework as an American citizen. The 4th of July weekend is much more than barbecues and trips to the beach. Ryan, any final thoughts from you? I mean, I've got to lift my jaw up off the floor here. I appreciate the judge's
No,
candor. I appreciate it.
someone in the comments said, listen, when people who talk deliberately and slowly, they're usually the smartest people in the room. And there's like a lot of commenters, I see this all the time when I do these interviews with the judge, is people say, I could listen to him talk all day long.
Me too.
And that's how I feel about him. He's probably sick of listening to me because I've been driving him crazy for the last 2 days getting this piece out.
Yeah.
But watching him and how detailed he was with every comma, every word,
Yeah.
sending me texts. This is precisely how this line has to be. It was just a joy to watch that process, and a brilliant man work on a piece for the ages. I was very, very proud to have a small part in it. And I just have an appeal to your listeners and readers, Jim. I told Judge Luttig, the first name I mentioned, the show I wanted him to do to talk about this piece was your show. And so
Oh,
thank you for
goodness.
having us on. And, you have almost 4,000 people watching this right now. I hope everyone will download the piece, grab a link to that piece, and just share it with 1, 5, 10, 20 people social media, your email lists, your Christmas card list. Just share the piece widely. I promised Judge Luttig if he published this piece with TELUS News, I would do everything I could to get as many eyeballs on the piece as possible. And I hope everyone out there can help. Thank you so much, Jim, for getting the word out on it.
Thank
You're welcome.
thank you both, Jim and Ryan. It's really an honor for me to be on with the two of you.
Stop it.
Yeah. Well, and right back at you, Judge. It's such an honor. And when Ryan called me yesterday to say that we were going to do this, I couldn't really contain my excitement. I was very excited to just to reconnect and speak with you again. It's really terrific. And Ryan, I owe you a steak or the meal of your choice. So that's definitely on me. But and I will say this
Treat both of you at some point. How about I treat the two of you?
Hey, that sounds good. That sounds great. I never refuse an order from a judge. I try not to do that.
I'm going to break the news here. He's in Charlottesville right now, I'm wherever you are, Judge. I'm going to try and get him to record an audio version of this piece and release it as a podcast before July 4th. So now I've said it out loud, Judge. Now you have to do it.
Perfect. And don't forget, this this program that we're doing right now will go into record mode and people will be able to watch it all weekend long. We typically get tens of thousands of views after this is over. And so I think a lot of folks are going to see this and, really just, I'm absolutely blown away and really honored that you came on this program to do this, Judge. And Ryan, thanks to both of you very much.
Thank you, Jim.
Have a good afternoon.
All right. Happy 4th of July. Happy Independence Day. Really appreciate it. All right. Thanks to both of you.